Hey, everybody. Welcome into episode 138 of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. My guest on the show today is Dr. Donya Ball. And here's what you need to know about Donya. She is a transformative superintendent in California. She's a passionate author and an inspiring national keynote speaker. Donya excels in leading her staff to inspire and motivate students to pursue their passions, preparing them for a life beyond the classroom. Dr. Ball is also a professor of administrative leadership and teacher education, bringing over 2 decades of experience in mentoring and coaching in her roles. As a seasoned guide for top executives, Donya navigates the complex storms of leadership. She's the author of 2 impactful books, Adjusting the Sails, Weathering the Storms of Administrative Leadership, and Against the Wind, Leadership at 36,000 Feet, which delve into the real-world challenges of leadership. So Donya and I sat down and had a conversation recently, and we really dove into the ins and outs of leadership development and leadership growth. This is a fantastic episode, folks. We had so much fun. We also spent a little bit of time talking about her upcoming workshop this summer. She has a 6-hour incredible workshop that is all about early career leaders, and it's super, super fantastic. Folks, you're going to love this episode, and you're going to get it all right on the other side of this. When I made the transition from being a high school principal to being a superintendent, I did it for one primary reason, and that's my passion for seeing other leaders grow. As a high school principal, once I figured myself out, once I stopped being a big firefighter and mess maker and actually started being a leader, I fell in love with coaching my assistant principals, with coaching my department heads, my aspiring leaders. I just fell in love with that. And I chased that passion into a superintendency because I really thought, hey, this will give me the opportunity to coach even more leaders. That's actually not true. However, that didn't mean that I didn't continue to love coaching leaders, and I found another avenue for that. And so anytime I come across somebody who is very much of the same mindset that I am, I love to have conversations. And it just happens that recently I got connected with Dr. Donya Ball, and wow, folks, sometimes it's like you are sharing a brain with someone, and that's how it is with Donya. So Donya is still currently a seated superintendent, but every bit as passionate about helping early career leaders grow as I am. So much so that she's got this cool program. We're going to talk about it later in the show this summer, a 6-hour principal prodigy program, all kinds of really cool stuff. Multiple time author, writing 2 great books about leadership. Man, we've got so many fun things to talk about today, but I'm going to stop gushing and I'm going to throw the microphone across across cyberspace to Dr. Donya Ball. Thanks so much for joining me here on the podcast.
Wow, Darrin, that was, I'll say, like a one-of-a-kind intro right there. You elevated this so much, and you are absolutely right. Instant connection with you, and our passion, right, is talking everything related to leadership and all of the ins and outs of how to make it through to the other side, not just surviving, but making this incredible difference and loving every bit of it. And so I'm so excited to talk with you today about all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun today. And certainly, you and I have had quite a few conversations. I'm glad we're finally hitting record on one of them so we can share that with the listeners and let them maybe, gain some insights or laugh at a couple of people who are just super passionate about leadership, whatever it might be today. Before we go too far, Donya, let's do this. Let's allow you to maybe orient our leaders a little bit on your journey, let them know a little bit about you. So go as far back as you would like, share as much as you would like. Keep in mind, we probably want to keep this to around 30 minutes or so. But let's go. Yeah. Tell everybody who is Donya Ball.
Yeah. Who's Donya Ball? So, there's just as you, there's like multifaceted, right, versions and
Great word.
involvement to get to where we are today. It's been quite the journey, some amazing things, some really, really difficult times, all of it absolutely contributing to this person today and truly the impact, right, that I aim to make each and every day. And so I actually, what's really interesting is that I originally set out to go into a career of advertising and marketing. And that's what I got my undergraduate degree from. And I really realized early on, as I was heading in that direction with that career right out of college, that wow, branding, right? The concept of branding, so absolutely critical to the success of any industry, any career driven person. But what was really missing, and that I discovered very early on, was the lack of service, the lack of giving to others. And so it was just a really cutthroat industry, highly competitive. I would say very superficial at times, not exactly authentic. And for me, I've always been raised, in an environment by two absolutely amazing parents who believe in the power of rawness, believe in the power of really integration with those that are different than us, that are not necessarily like minded than us. And so I really took a shift and I was like, you know what? I'm young. I don't know what I want to do. I know it's not this. I took an instructional aid position through a program called America Reads. And basically, it was at the time a nationwide program where they would take either college students or recently graduated students and they put them in very challenging schools. I was in LA County at the time in California and basically connected with really difficult situations in which kids, right, primarily elementary kids, were really falling further and further behind. And what I absolutely loved about that experience, because it was kind of the crossroads into education, is that leaning in to the relationship piece, right, between adult and child, and understanding super early on in just like these first few days, wow, just by leaning in and capturing that relatability, human connection, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, right? There's interest, there's engagement, there's she actually cares about me. And so from then on out, I was bound and determined in my career as an educator, whether it was as a teacher, vice principal, principal, assistant superintendent, and then definitely now the past 5 years in this superintendency, is leaning in and investing in people first, and really the magic of outcomes follows, right? You cannot have one without the other. And I know that you are absolutely on the same page with that because of you devoting your right service now, even past your superintendency, to coaching and mentoring and really giving leaders, which is really now where I'm at, that camaraderie of I'm there with you. I've been there. I've done that. I'm still in the trenches myself, gathering so much experiences. But instead of it just stopping here with my experience, my goodness, that's this journey I've been on. The power of transforming my experience to our experiences. And that is the phenomenal impact that we can make as leaders and continuing that service oriented spirit in this phase of our careers.
Yeah, I love that so much. You're right. I think um, the experiences that each of us in leadership roles take on. You and I were talking about this just before we hit the record button, but each of us has all these unique experiences, all these things that have transpired in the course of our career that challenge us, that allow us the opportunity to respond a certain way, or certainly to reflect on ourselves and learn from how we handle situations, how we lean into other individuals, and how we grow, right, as
Mhm.
professionals. Being able to share that with, and honestly, being able to sit down beside other leaders and just, number one, allow them to download what their experiences are.
Totally.
Most of the time, honestly, Donya, it's not about my experience; it's about their experience, about me
That's it.
listening, reflecting, and in many ways just asking really good questions, right? I think that's, to me, that's the
Yes.
most important role of any leadership coach. I recall, so vividly working with a leadership coach when I was a principal. I've mentioned it off the top. I've talked about it countless times on the show, so I won't belabor it. But being that guy who really struggled and working with a leadership coach, that was probably the most important piece, was my coach helping
Totally.
me just reflect on what I was doing well, but also where I was struggling and how maybe I could be a little bit more intentional. It fed my passion for now doing what I'm doing. So I'm
That's it.
curious because that's where you are, and that's where you're going, and that's what you're building towards as well. Talk a little bit about that passion for
Yeah.
pouring into other leaders. Where does that come from at the core of Donya Ball?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what it is that I really struggled my early years in school leadership and site leadership specifically with being able to find connections with people that were okay talking about the down and dirty behind the scenes stuff that happens in the vice principal's office or in the principal's office, right? And so I set out really early on in my career with this vision that, my goodness, we are lacking leaders who are normalizing, which is exactly what you're talking about right now, normalizing leadership challenges. It brings me to why, no wonder, right? There's such a short time span and this revolving door of these leaders who are like, they aspire because either they've been tapped because someone has said, hey, I see this gift of leadership in you, let's roll, let's go, right? So they've either been shoulder tapped or they themselves believe that they have this grit, that they're going to dive right in. However, what we know, right, is that 2 to 3 years nationwide, out. Why is that? Why are our leaders not able, at the root cause, why are they not able to? Because we have some amazing, they have grit, they have tenacity, they're determined, they're goal driven. But why is it that at the end of the day, peace out, throw in the towel, right? It's not because they're doing a bad job. It's not because, I would even beg, that they can't handle the stress. What I do believe is that they're not able to connect with people who are able to say, you got this. This is how we're going to do this. Let's roll through this together, right? It's the coaching, it's the mentorship, it's just talking through. And the higher you go in this journey, we know the less of us there are. So the lonelier it gets. And for whatever reason, I come across these extremely egotistical, prideful leaders who are like, I can't talk about it because if I talk about it, it means I'm not handling it well.
Right.
There's shame,
That's it.
there's embarrassment, right? And I'll tell you, just because, Darrin, that this is like hot off the press, and I feel like this experience that I recently had yesterday evening folds beautifully into this right now, is that we deal with high emotion environments with staff, students, and parents because we are charged with taking care of these children, right? In public education, we are taking care of them. It is more than just academics, it is taking care of them. And when there appears to be a safety compromise at a school site, right? And parents are scared, students are scared for their safety because of some decisions, perhaps, that another student has made. Leadership. This is where leadership comes in. So, what I decided to do, 2 days ago, is I said, you know what? We're going to lean in. And this is why I love your podcast title, Leaning into Leadership, because this is exactly what we do. We can hide behind the messaging, we can hide behind the circumstances, or we can lean in. And so I tell the principal, I said, this is what we're going to do. And I talked with my board president. We're going to have an open parent forum. We're getting it from the parents. We're going to put ourselves on the line to be attacked, to be hated. We're going to intro it with our love. I am here. I am doing this with all of you. We are going to take this risk. We are going to be vulnerable. And the reason being is because the only way that these families are going to feel comfortable to get back to this mindset of this school is rock solid is because of the messaging and what we as leaders are able to step up to the plate and say, I am going to risk being called a blankety blank blank blank. I am going to risk hearing this happened to be on Zoom. It was a virtual forum, but I'm going to risk screen time of being nailed up against the wall. But those risks are worth it because the outcome ultimately is, wow, Donya is a person for us. She's fighting for us. She cares about us. And so through that process, right, I invited the principal, vice principal, director of special ed that have nothing to do with this experience, right, with this situation from another school. And I said, hey, I want you to attend this forum because this is going to be an amazing learning experience for you to see how myself and the principal navigate being on the hot seat, right? And they're texting me, they're blowing up my phone going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that parent said that. And I can't believe you did, right? It is like reality show, like amazing stuff. But at the end of the day, you know what we did? I clicked end meeting and I looked out my window and I took a deep breath and I got chills, right? And I know you've been in this same exact place, Darrin, where it's like, okay, this right now is what it's about. This is what it's about. Because it wasn't just the investment in the people, right? The families, the students. It was about leaning in and investing in the future superintendent, right? Future principals. And I hope that answers the question of like, that's like where the passion is fueled, is that we have this charge where it's not just about us. It's about grooming and exposing these future and current leaders to these types of situations.
Well, I think you absolutely crushed the answer to the question because
I'm glad I did.
let's just call it what it is, right? Yeah, I mean, that one Yeah, if you want to know verbally what a home run looks like, that's it right there. Because I agree with you. You know, the reality is, as leaders, we have this. I don't know if it's an ethical or a moral, piece about
Yeah.
us. A duty, if you will, to grow the next generation of leaders. I'm a big sports fan, especially football. And I've always found it very interesting when you hear announcers talk about the Bill Belichick coaching tree, or how he comes from the Bill Parcells coaching tree, or
Yes.
that's the same thing. We're doing the same thing as leaders. It's our duty, our responsibility to pour into other leaders. I love how you said that was about preparing the next principal and the next superintendent. Oh, maybe they're in your district, maybe they're going to go somewhere else. Wherever it is, doesn't matter,
Exactly.
because they're going to be part of Donya's leadership tree. And Donya is part of somebody else's leadership tree. You referenced the tap on the shoulder earlier. Whatever it might be, if you're like me, and you are, I'm saying that more to our listeners. If you're like me, you get a charge out of seeing others excel in leadership.
Yes.
Earlier this week, so we're recording this on the 3rd of May. It'll go out a couple of weeks from now. But earlier this week, it was National Principals Day, Principal Appreciation Day, and
Yeah.
I say this not to pat myself on the back. I say this because I think it's kind of a cool thing. I spent a good portion of my day shooting video messages off to, honestly, members of my leadership tree, just telling them how proud
I
I am of
love
the work they are doing in their leadership role, whether they're a principal now or they're a superintendent now, whatever their current title is. It's those leaders that I've been able to pour a little bit into, and hopefully they gleaned a little something from me. So yeah, hearing you talk about, and the way that you shaped the answer to that question, to embed a story in there, especially a situation that can be very emotionally charged. Because let's be honest, I
Yes.
love that you also referenced that you struggled early on sometimes too as a leader. Those are the pieces that we're not prepared for. When it's, hey, can you evaluate a teacher, or can you help shape curriculum, can you, some of those things, yeah, okay, but can you handle the difficult conversation? Can you handle the grandmother who comes barreling into your office, and before she sits down has called you every name in the book and led with an F-bomb on every one of those names? Can you handle that situation? Can you handle the situation when you get the phone call that there was a bomb threat for your school, or that you need to evacuate your school because
Yeah.
of whatever, right? I mean, I could go on and on and on. Those are all real situations for me that I dealt with that just happened to come to the top of my mind. When you're working with early career leaders, when you're working with your leadership team, and I know you're going to have some new members, I think, coming here soon to your leadership team.
Yes.
How do you let's focus first in your role as the soup. We'll talk a little bit more about the
Yes.
6 hour principal prodigy thing here in just a few minutes. But I'm curious, as that superintendent, what are you doing to lean into those individuals outside of what you just shared, to help prepare them and allow them to take ownership of their role, while at the same time being there to mentor them?
I absolutely love that question because, you know, I was so fortunate to have two actually phenomenal, a superintendent and an assistant superintendent who were when I was a principal, right? And I would have those difficult, crazy, come out of nowhere situations where they would take me alongside them and they would basically walk me through it. And they wouldn't do the work for me. They didn't micromanage me. They had trust that I was going to be able to do it. But, I would sit on the front porch of one of these gals late at night as we talked and rehearsed, right? Before I went out and then had the conversation myself. So, first and foremost, access is absolutely critical. And when I say access, it's not just picking up the phone and saying, hey, want to make you aware of this situation, Donya, this is what's going on, and this is what I'm going to do, and I give the green light. That is like base level, what anyone can do, but we got to go deeper than that. And so for some of these like highly charged situations, it's the gift of time where, like, for example, today at 4 o'clock, I'm going to be meeting with that principal. And I'm going to be meeting hopefully with my board chair, my board president, and we are going to be reflecting and debriefing that situation that occurred last night, the situations that led up to the parent forum. And we're going to continue to just not reflect, but plan, right? And so when we in the superintendent seat are confronted with these challenging storms, doesn't really matter what it is. It's not just about being the sounding board or the thought partner. It's about staying with that person from start to finish. It's like, it's cyclical, right? It's like, I'm here for you to brainstorm and ask questions in the beginning on how to form a plan of action. I'm here during the implementation phase. If you feel like things went south and it didn't go as expected, I'm here to help you retweak. I'm also here at the end to reflect and talk about, okay, are we good, or do we still need to put anything else into place? At the end of the day, I ask the questions, they have the answers. I very rarely will direct and say, you must go about it this way. That is a huge disservice. And I actually just interviewed someone for some research I'm doing on my own on micromanaging behaviors, micromanaging tendencies, because it's super interesting to me how blatantly clear it is sometimes when you have principals or district leaders who are control freaks, but they'll be the first ones to say, I'm not micromanaging, I'm just doing what's right. Right. So I also take a good look at myself and I'm like, okay, how much airtime am I taking in this conversation? How much questioning versus direct statements am I also taking up? Because if I'm doing a lot of telling, then I'm really moving into that micromanaging world versus asking, Darrin, like, okay, so what I'm hearing is this. So now talk to me about, what do you think is going to be the way that you're going to address this parent? Or what is going to be the way to address this staff member that has excessive absences or that has terrible classroom management? What do you think that person needs? What support? Ultimately, what support do you need? Right? It's a question. I'm not saying this is what I'm going to do for you. What support do you need in order for this to happen? That to me is like really, really healthy strategies for how I try to build up my leaders and their confidence, right? Because we all struggle with that confidence, especially early on. And we lose sleep over, should I take this path or this path or this path? And ultimately let them own, okay, this is where you're going to go. I'm here. We're going to talk about it along the way. And we can change our minds too, and allow them to change our minds. I mean, I do that all the time. So, and give them that grace if they're like, you know what, that failed. We said we were going to go this direction, but awful decision. Okay, we kind of can have some laughs about it. We can normalize it. Now let's roll with this new plan. So really, it's that authenticity, it's that accessibility, it's that gift of time, and then just those strategies of, they do most of the talking, I do most of the listening, I ask a lot of questions, and I support, and I only step in and control if it is absolutely needed, because there's going to be a fallout that is going to affect us in a very bad way.
And so the regular listeners on the show are thinking to themselves, my goodness, now I see why Darrin and Donya connected so very well. Because man, you're describing so much of how I feel leadership should be done. There's a couple pieces in there I want to pull out real quick.
Yeah, there's so much,
first and
right?
foremost,
It could be 5 hours of conversation.
Oh my gosh, I know,
with
right?
all of this,
yeah,
right?
That's fine. That's fine. Everybody's going to enjoy a little bit longer episode this week. It's totally fine. And so I'm pulling out from there. One, my leadership teams almost got to the point where they would jokingly come in and ask a question, knowing I was going to answer it with a question. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to ask you first and foremost. Well, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you think you might do. What might be some of your options here? The micromanaging piece, Donya, it's absolute gold what you talked about with micromanaging, because I think there are a couple of different ways that people fall into that micromanagement trap. And yes, by the way, if you're saying, well, I'm not a micromanager, if you lead with that statement, you're a micromanager. I mean, if you even have to use the qualifier, right? If you have to use the qualifier, you probably are, whether you mean to or not. And the trap, right? And the trap sometimes is, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself. If you're not letting them do your job, you're micromanaging them. Anyway, I can riff on that one for hours.
Absolutely.
But where I really want to go, and then kind of move this forward, I feel like so much of the art of leadership and the art of growing leaders is what you said kind of early in that particular answer, and that was that you are the one with the questions, they are the ones with the answers. And when you lead from that place, folks, like if you take anything from this episode, you're going to take hundreds, but if you can take one thing, take this.
Yes.
As a leader, be the listener, not the answer provider, because then you can really pull that out of everyone else. You want to get ownership from your leadership team. That's the key right there. Donya is feeding you with leadership gold right there.
Well, and it gives me chills. Like that gives me chills, because I don't think, I'm a professor as well for an admin credential program, right? And there's this belief a lot of the times from aspiring leaders or new leaders that the district office is going to tell me what to do, or my principal will direct me and tell me what to do. And although, yes, that may be certainly true for things that are compliance related, right? Or laws, right? Like this is not a two-way conversation. This is compliance. This is, you need to have this report to, for the board, whatever, by this time. So yeah, I get that there are those types of things, but what we're talking about today for the content of this podcast is not that, because I would beg that a lot of leaders do that just fine. It's the other stuff, right? It's being confronted with critics. It's not knowing how to be able to manage raising young children with really late nights, on the day job because of a lot of things needing attention or needing to be going to, the sports event or the band concert, right? It's dealing with the pieces that I don't know how to pivot during a crisis, right? Yeah. I don't know, because I am someone who plans out my day and I check things off, and then I'm hit with something, and I don't really know how to effectively be able to pivot and then come back without just it totally throwing me off course and then spiraling me into feeling like I'm an ineffective leader because of that. That stuff, right? That is the stuff, Darrin, where we as mentors and coaches, especially when you get to this superintendency seat, it's like you're kind of at the end of the line, right? There's really not, unless you go to like the State Department or county office or whatever, there's not really in a district office, you are at the end of the line. So really, that is okay, there's going to be somebody after me. Who is it? What am I doing to leave? This is where this critical word of legacy comes in, right? Where am I as a leader knowing that in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that my decisions, my questions, my actions, my accessibility is still felt in this organization because it was that much of the leaning in and strategic approaches that are just not being felt today, but are impacting the organization for years and years and years. And the awesome thing is that we have so many leaders to glean from that have done this incredibly well. But I will also put in here, we have had top level executives and leaders that have done this horribly. And we can learn just as much, if not more, from those deficient leaders than the ones that have been amazing, because we see the detrimental impact that some of their decisions and behaviors have had on the people and the organization long term, which takes years to recover from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I mean, that again, I mean, there's just all of these different, moments in my career popping into my mind as I'm listening to you talk. Some of the really great leaders that I worked for, some of the really poor leaders that I worked for, and just, kind of the in between there. And, certainly probably some of the best leadership advice I ever got. The principal that hired me to be an assistant principal told me, pay attention because you will learn just as much, if not more, from the mistakes people make as you will from the things that they do right. And I just think that's so powerful. Let's do this. Let's pivot just a little bit. Again, you and I both really passionate about those early career leaders, and you're so passionate about it that you have this awesome 6-hour principal prodigy program that will launch this summer. It launches in
Yes.
June. I'm honored that you've included me to
I'm
be a part
so
of this.
excited for you to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's going to be great. So
Hey,
let's
the
talk about
first
that
day
just a
I
little
met
bit.
you, right?
Yeah,
The first meeting I met you,
yeah,
I'm like, hey, you wanna be part of this? Because it's just that when you meet other leaders that speak your same language, it's just dynamic energy, right?
absolutely. Yeah, you just have to lean into that. And like I said from the very top. I mean, folks, this is just genuine right here. I mean, Donya and I are like absolutely on the same page right here. So let's talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
program. What leaders can expect. What does that look like? How does that get framed? What are they going to come away with this
Yeah.
incredible 6-hour project? Go ahead.
So you know what? You know how I was talking earlier about the lack of opportunities that that leaders in general have to be together, right? And so last summer, a year ago, or last spring, I had this vision of, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a pilot. And I did my very first virtual series last summer. And it was very similar to the one that is going to be this summer. And basically, it was, I'm going to develop content, right, that is highly applicable to the site. And that one was site or district leaders. This one is specifically for principals, because one of the lessons that I learned through doing now these virtual series, this will be number 4, is that, right, we just keep reflecting and we keep getting better, is that it is so fantastic to bring together leaders in the same space. And when I say space for this, it's not in the same auditorium or hall or multi-purpose room, right? It's on screen, because one of the things
Like the
that
Hollywood Squares.
one of the things that we've all have been able to really take from those COVID years is the efficiency of connecting with people cross country, right? Exactly like what you and I are doing. It has opened up our world to that. So although, you have learners where it's like, wow, it's just so much better to be in a seat with that speaker right there on stage. I totally agree with that for like things like keynotes and whatnot. But when you're looking at like, this is like a workshop, this is a class, right? This is amazing content that is now chunked into 6 1-hour sessions, because our attention spans with screen time, we know, cannot go much longer than that. But we have myself and you, and we do this dynamic, engaging, relatable pieces revolving around all of the absolute challenges and critical skills that a principal, whether they're brand new or they're seasoned, are going to need to not only understand, but be able to forge through and be able to have key takeaways so that tomorrow, the next day, in 5 years, I have been able to gain such critical learning that it is going to impact my overall success as that school leader. And so that is really the purpose and how the program is designed. And I've been able to take feedback, right, from past participants, and they love also the recordings, because you and I both know that principals, their day blows up sometimes at 6 a.m. and they're like, oh, I was going to go listen to Donya and Darrin, but guess what? That ain't happening because I'm having to deal with X, Y, and Z. And so that gives them the flexibility to then tap into the learning when it works best for them. And so that was also a lesson learned along the way, is that I was recording all of them. But now what I have basically are like these amazing courses. I have 4, this will be the 4th series of amazing content with amazing speakers. And I'm super, super excited about now narrowing in on the principalship specifically, because you and I both know that is the leadership role that has the most tremendous impact in the school organization.
100%. 100%. It is, and I'm going to build on that. So yes, and it's the hardest role and it's the most rewarding role. And
Absolutely.
man, when you get the right people in there and they get it right, oh my goodness, the amazing things that can happen in schools. It's just incredible. Folks, just really quick, I'm just gonna like list off to you what the topics are for this event. Donya's gonna kick it off with creating your support system and equilibrium in life and leadership. You've got time mismanagement, micromanagement, communicating with charisma, which I think I'm going to be taking that one. We've got one on hiring and firing with dignity, early warning signs when your character is under fire. Those are, again, you mentioned it earlier in the show, that's the real tough stuff, right? When people come at you personally, how do you prepare for that? How do you handle it? Also, navigating career setbacks, finding meaning in the mayhem, in the firestorm that is the job, and then wrapping the whole thing up with discovering new purpose and sustainable leadership, which I think is the one that I'm coming back to be a part of. This thing is going to be just absolutely fantastic. So certainly if you're, in year 1, 2, 3, 4, definitely this is for you. The link is in the show notes. Go click on that so you can get registered. If, however, you're a ways into your career and you're just feeling like maybe you just need a little something to stoke the fires, go hit that link, because this is going to be perfect for you. If this episode brought energy to you, which, unless you don't have a pulse, this episode brought energy to you, you should be clicking on this thing.
Yes, and Darrin,
you should be hanging with me and Donya during the course of this summer.
We're going to have a blast. The other piece of it too is that if you're a leader right now listening and you're like, you know what, I don't really want to commit to all 6, but like I absolutely want to lean into micromanaging, or I absolutely want to lean into when your character's under fire, right? You have the option to just register for 1 or 2 or 3 or the whole thing. So we want this to be meaningful and truly differentiated for what the principals need.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely amazing. So, and keep this in mind too. If you register for the whole thing, see, here I am like doing Donya's promo work for her. There you go. You're going to get a copy of her newest book, Against the Wind, which, by the way,
Yes,
is fantastic.
that's
Her
where the
first book is
content comes
Adjusting the
from.
Sails. There
Oh,
you go.
you are so
There you go.
awesome.
Absolutely.
You are so
Yeah, I
awesome.
have my
Well, and
moments.
that's where the content comes from. All those topics that you beautifully articulated, they're coming from Against the Wind. And so,
Yeah.
yes, you know
Some
what?
of
I
my
was like,
content will come from this guy right here.
I'm not at
Yeah.
my home, my work
There
office
you
to
go.
be able to show Darrin's awesomeness, but
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yeah.
have that and I'm tapping into it.
Yeah, awesome stuff right there. Okay, so Donya, we're at that point
Yep,
in the show. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody here
absolutely.
on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. And I mean, you've answered this question probably already like 25 times, but I'm going to give you one more opportunity, or maybe go in another direction. This is the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So, how are you leaning into leadership right now?
You know, I'm going to tell you this. Last November, I really found a rejuvenation in a different way for my purpose with exactly what you're talking about right now. And to make a really, really long story short, I will tell you this. One of those 2 mentors that I shared with you, that I had these phenomenal, superintendent and assistant superintendent when I was a principal, I was able to connect with one of them last February of 2023. And she unexpectedly passed in November. She had like a 3-week knowledge window where she discovered that she had cancer. And it was a shock, right? To her family, certainly to friends, everything. But during that time, because when we had connected in February that same year, we had not seen each other for several years. And she and I had gone wine tasting and we'd like just had this amazing 3 days together. And I just was asking her, I was so hungry for like, hey, so why did you do this back then? And why did you do that back then? And when she passed, I kind of took all of that and I brought it into this one piece of, oh my gosh, so many of us are missing the mark because we are so hyper focused about leadership and our jobs of overcoming those demands that it has taken over our lives. And what I am now really embodying and engraving in my, in my keynotes and in my messaging is we need to get away as leaders of saying things like, when I retire, I am going to. When I get to summer break, I am going to. Or spring break, I am going to, right? Because as you and I both know, we may not have summer break. Retirement, even though it may seem close, we may never even get there. And so we need to adjust our mindsets to, I'm going to do these things now. Now, today is the day, or I'm going to plan it now versus I'm going to work my butt off for the next 15 years. I'm going to retire and then I'm going to go travel the world. And so my urge or my hope is that, because I've certainly have taken this from her, right? Because she had that most beautiful gift of being able to do exactly what I just said, is for the leaders that are listening now, is that we don't know if we're going to have the time to be able to do these amazing experiences. And so the trick is figuring out, by us choosing leadership and all of the time consuming pieces of it, how can we still live this amazing and fulfilling life being super happy doing the things that we love. And I will tell you that since November, I have absolutely prioritized that. I've taken a ton of trips since then, whether they're small or large. I'm a football person just like you are, Darrin. I went to Denver. My husband's a Denver Broncos fan. We went to a game on New Year's Eve and had a freaking blast. Why? I had so much going on during that time. My book was just being released. No, we are going now and we are going to do it. And we will never regret that. So I don't even know if you were expecting me to go that direction, because it's not even necessarily leadership specifically. It's actually like putting the leadership over here and taking care of ourselves and our people.
No, I think that's huge. I love that. I love that for 100 different reasons, and not just because you said your husband's a Bronco fan. I have been since I was a little tiny kid. And I mean, right over my shoulder, right here, this autographed John Elway helmet, and on and on and on. Anyway, no, I think
FYI, I'm going to tell you something real quick. Our very first date was to Super Bowl at when the Broncos and this
was
you're
it
going to
a win or a loss?
No, it was a win. It was just 5 years ago.
When they played Carolina, probably.
Carolina and Panthers. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good first date right there.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Love it so much. So, all right. So Donya, people are going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to follow you on social media, all that stuff. We're going to drop all those things in the link.
Perfect.
But if there's one place they should just go and get in touch with Donya, where is it?
My website, donyaball.com, has everything. All of the upcoming projects that I'm working on, all the book material, whatnot. As far as social media goes, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I need to get better with X. Maybe you can coach me on that piece.
I'll coach you a
little
bit on that.
Much better on that.
There you go. Excellent stuff. Oh my gosh, this was such a fantastic conversation.
So much fun.
Man, this
Thank you so much for having me, Darrin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Donya. Man, what an outstanding conversation today with Dr. Donya Ball. Just so many powerful pieces that we can take away from that episode, and so many great leadership gold nuggets that Donya brought to the table for us to just really dive into and really pay deep attention to. Make sure you jump down in the show notes and hit those links. Check out Dr. Donya Ball. And certainly, again, if you are an aspiring leader, an early career leader, or just somebody who really wants a recharge and you're looking for an awesome summer opportunity for principal professional development, get in there, hit the link, and go check out that program. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And now it's time for a pep talk. For today's pep talk, I want to talk about something that Donya referred to during the course of this episode, and that is the position that each of us as leaders have and the responsibility that we have to grow the next generation of leaders. I love how Donya talked about bringing those others alongside, the principal and assistant principal who were not affected by the situation they were dealing with, but she brought them alongside because she wanted them to learn from the situation as observers, to have the opportunity to kind of sit on the balcony and take it all in. As leaders, we need to make sure we're doing more and more of that, giving other leaders the opportunity to grow, to learn, to take those experiences in, to have the opportunity to learn before those things come at them. As a seasoned leader, the more you can share the experiences that you've had, the more questions you can ask of others and allow them to continue to grow as leaders, that's where your impact is truly felt. So as you go into this coming week, as you go into the coming year, folks, lean into those opportunities to grow those leaders. It's an absolutely huge piece. That's what I got for you this week. Thank you so much for jumping in and listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Have a road to awesome day.